We love Canadians, we love Canada. It's good to get out of the U.S.
Specialty stores, e-commerce have taken over, and the Bay just did not adapt.
I haven't been Prime Minister for a week yet, and you can see what we've done thus far. We can do even more with that strong and clear mandate to move forward for the country, for all Canadians.
Hello and welcome to this very special edition of the 6 o'clock panel. This is a segment we do every Friday on Check News at 6, but with Rob Shaw, Political Capital, off for the week. They gave us the keys to do a full half-hour show. Good idea, bad idea, I guess only time will tell. But thankfully, we've got some incredible panelists to help us through that journey. We have the one and only Jack Knox, a very popular writer, spent many years with the Times Colonist, and you've written 2,104 books at this point, right?
Exactly.
Or just four. Either way, a very, very popular guy. We have Megan Johns, the founder and owner of The Green Kiss, a health and beauty shop in Saanich, also a great online retailer and a great musician as well, part of the duo County Line.
Yeah.
Correct? Awesome. Can't wait to hear more about that. And to my far right, Rahim Khudabux from Maximum Express.
Woo.
Rahim the Dream
That's
is the only way.
That's the name.
I've mentioned a couple people. I was like, oh, we got Rahim coming on there. Rahim the Dream's coming on?
Yes.
Phew. No shortage of topics to hit this week. We got trade wars, Bay Days are going to be numbered, and of course the federal election. Now we're recording this on a Friday. It's expected the writ is going to drop on Sunday, the day this show airs, but why not throw a federal election into the mix? Jack, let's start with you. What do you think about that?
I think it's going to be wild. The Mark Carney is not running against Pierre Poilievre, or vice versa. They're both running against Donald Trump.
Interesting.
You know, this is the. Can you imagine 3 months ago, had there been an election called, what the results would be? The Liberals would have been blown out of the water.
Right.
Now, if you believe the polls, they could form a majority government. This is. Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, who'd have thunk it indeed. It's interesting. Mark Carney's using a lot of the same policies that Pierre Poilievre has been promising for months and months. And so I'm wondering, from a small business perspective, does that help? Does it hurt? Like, what does a federal election really do for the small business?
Yeah, what we're seeing kind of on the front lines of things dealing with the public is that there is just a general feeling of a bit of, there's anger with what's happening right now, a bit of fear. And so I do have hope that this federal election right now can actually hopefully try to unite people towards this issue that's happening south of the border.
Yeah, and south of the border is the big topic for a lot of people. Rahim, I'm interested from the commerce side. I mean, there's been this big push to buy local and to buy Canadian. And I know we want to talk a little bit more about that because those are some differences there. But on the commerce side, an election thrown into the mix of everything else that's going on, is that good or bad in this time right now?
I mean, uncertainty is never good for business, right? And so and we live in a government town, and so people tend to hunker down. They want some reassurances before they get out and spend money again. So it can be difficult to add it on top of everything else that we've been facing through this whole thing, through Trump coming in and the Trumpism and the Trump effect. It's really having an impact. The good news is that it's giving people something to look forward to. It's giving some people to focus on, and hopefully can help us as Canadians feel safe. Like, we're looking to find a leader that can take on this administration, as well as all the other geopolitical stuff happening in the world.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting point there, because I think right now there is this huge unity right across the country. Everyone's proud to be Canadian, and it's Canada first. But then you turn on the TV and it's attack ad and attack ad and attack ad. And they seem to be getting worse and worse. Like, I mean, just the production value seems to be worse and worse. But just tell me, like, does that work, do you think, the attack?
Attack ads do work. Okay. Historically, they do work. But you have to make them real. There has to be a kernel of something in there that people will say, yes, they've got a point.
Right.
If it's just your Trump, no, your Trump, people are going to go, this is just straight politics. People aren't dumb.
Right.
They can recognize manipulation when they see it, generally. So the attack ads, historically they do work. The parties that try not to go negative generally lose, unfortunately.
But it's sway your opinion, do you think, though? Like, if you're one side or the other, I get it, it's a rallying cry to some extent, but...
For me, as I would say an average middle-class Canadian, when I see them, it's a very timely question for me, because just last week I saw one and I thought, gosh, this is coming across as like an SNL skit. That is how dramatic this is, the way the lighting is, the colors they're using, the voice. Yeah. So for me, it gives it puts a bad taste in my mouth for the parties that are putting them out there. But
yeah. What about you, Rahim? Because they seem to be getting more and more so, right?
Yeah, I agree. I was going to do an attack ad on Jack today when I knew he was going to be on the panel, but I decided against it. But I feel like I was talking to a couple of my business partners as well, and about attack ads specifically, and I think they work, but you just don't really know how they're going to work. They might not work in your favor. They might work in your favor because you're also marketing the other person. You're marketing the other parties. And so sometimes it reinforces other people's beliefs, sometimes it doesn't. So I don't know, like I believe you that they probably work historically, but I don't know if they are as effective. But they also create a whole bunch of angst and anxiety for people.
Yeah, you're just adding to that angst and fear and anxiety right now that I just feel as a Canadian, it does bother me quite a bit to see that, because you're not creating that hopefulness that a lot of people need right now. You're doing the opposite.
And while I agree historically they have worked, I wonder if this year it's not going to be as much so, right? Like, that said, in my drive-in today, I saw they've changed the bumper stickers from Trudeau to Carney. So some people are very quick to get going. Yeah, right away. And quickly, I mean, on this stage, what kind of campaign do you think we'll see? Because this is going to happen really quickly. Are you expecting a bit of a nasty campaign? Are you expecting it to be very rah-rah? Or are you expecting it to be very anti-Trump?
It will be very anti-Trump.
Right.
And I'm more anti-Trump than you are.
Right.
I think that's going to be the core. And it's interesting. I think it's going to morph into a two-horse race, even here on the island, where the NDP holds 6 out of 7 seats. If you look at the polling data on the 338 yesterday, if you believe that poll, if an election were held today, the NDP would get blown out of the water on the island. It would become, I think it was 4 Conservatives, 2 Liberals, and maybe a Green. So we're, a lot can happen in 3-4 weeks to make people change their minds, but it's
fascinating.
Yeah.
And it really, I mean, I'm not going to ask for your political angles, but from the business side, the business community, I wasn't driving behind one of them today. They didn't have the sticker on their car. But what, I mean, what's more beneficial for a business? Is it more of a conservative mindset? Or does it really depend on which government you have in?
Tricky question.
Yeah, that is a tricky question. I don't know if it really matters, to be honest with you. I think stability is the answer there. We need a government that's going to bring stability in and make people feel comfortable to spend and be comfortable to travel within Canada, to open up their wallets again and feel comfortable in our own country and feel like we're going to have a country. Like, I think right now that's the big issue, is people don't feel safe. Whether it's an underlying fear or right in your face. And I think that's what we really need, is we need any government to come in and just give us some security that they'll be able to manage this and help us through this whole problem we're having.
You gotta remember too, like this time period in March right now feels eerily similar as a small business owner to 5 years ago, right? It's the same season, it's the same lighting in the sky, it's exactly 5 years later, and we're hit again with this massive amount of uncertainty. And I would just drive that point home. We're, as small business owners, you just said this, like, we're looking for stability so that the consumers can feel comfortable spending money like they're used to.
Very, very well said. Well, buying local, the trade war, and of course, Hudson's Bay now essentially going away. That's ahead on the 6 o'clock panel. Stay with us. Welcome back to the 6 o'clock panel. We're still chatting in the commercial break. That's how it works around here on the 6 o'clock panel. We got Jack Knox, Rahim Khudabux, and Megan Johns joining us today. Fantastic panelists. And I got to ask you, because we're talking about the Hudson's Bay Company, really tough news, and it seems to be hitting people pretty hard. Like, there's a connection to this store. I know it's Canada's oldest company, but it's pretty sad news, isn't it, that we're going to be losing the Hudson's Bay Company, not to mention 2 city blocks of real estate for a lot of these towns, right? And I'm interested for you, Rahim, what jumps out to you with this story?
I think the timing of it is like just so unfortunate, right? I mean, you never want to hear about a business going out. You never do. As a small business owner in this city or any city, it's heartbreaking when you hear about any business going out of business. But a Canadian iconic business like the Canadian business, to be going out at a time like this, it's almost just an extra shot to people. It's emotional. It's an emotionally charged closing for a lot of people. So it's hard. And of course, it'll impact our local economy. Those are big anchor tenants. They bring in a lot of people to downtown, to Mayfair, and so it's going to be hard to see.
Yeah, I know Mayfair side, but also like the Bay downtown, Mayfair, that's going to be big. And for a lot of people, I'm sure they go downtown to get something from one of those big stores, and then they go check out some of the smaller stores, and they go around, so you're going to lose that. Do you notice that? I know you're in Uptown, your bricks and mortar store. Do you notice that from some of the other big box stores? People come for something, and then come check you out and say, oh, wow, you've got amazing stuff here.
Yeah, at every plaza or center like that, it is, kind of a cohesive relationship between all the stores. You're counting on people to go to those big box stores and then discover you as a small business. Yeah, the Bay, the timing is just so sad. Like at the same time that our sovereignty is threatened as a country, our oldest, actually it's older than Canada, right?
It is, indeed, yes.
Our oldest business essentially is closing. It was my first job, so I have quite the tie to it, and that's where I kind of started my retail chops. Didn't think that I would still be in that industry now, but yeah, it's sad.
And from your perspective, Jack, like where do you put in these places? Because I know, like, is there these big box stores? Shopping habits are totally changing when it comes to that sort of stuff. So what works there?
I don't know.
Me either.
But remember, this is kind of the last domino to fall.
Right.
When I came to town, they just opened the Eaton Center.
Right.
And then you remember before the Bay moved in, Sears was there. They're gone. You look at the Mayfair location, that was Woodward's. So these have all gone. This one, the symbolism's there, the history's there, the timing's there. But is it really a surprise that it has gone the way that the others went? That we're all in this same model.
It is tough. And then, like, as far as Victoria Public Market this week announcing that they're going to be losing all those stalls, they said that essentially they're going to be putting in a small grocery store. What that grocery store is, we don't know yet, but that's sort of one of the only things that work. But I want to pivot and talk about the Buy Local and Buy Canadian campaign that's happening across the country right now, because it's really good. A lot of people are, going and buying Canadian and buying local. But Megan, you had an interesting point. Like, those are different things, buying local and buying Canadian, and people should kind of know that those are different things going into it as well.
Yeah, they are different things, and I think that what I'm hoping for in this movement right now is that there's going to be increased education as to how those are different things. I know that you had someone that you talked to, I believe, last week from the Think Local group in Victoria, and I just want to reiterate that stat that she shared, that 66 cents per dollar spent in local businesses stays in your local economy, and only 11 cents from like a multinational corporate chain stays in your local economy. So there's a very big difference between buying Canadian made on Amazon versus buying Canadian made at a locally owned store. And that's not really, from what I've seen anyways, really being talked about that much in our country right now. And I think that there's almost an accountability piece that we as Canadians kind of need to unite and take accountability to make those changes, because even if you look at the Bay, I see a lot of people that there's a lot of blame, like the bays are closing because no one's going into the downtown core. There's a lot of blame on the unhoused population, things like that.
Right. And
I think there's an accountability piece as we as Canadian consumers that we need to take, like, hold on, where are we voting with our dollar?
Yes, and I think that's a really good point. And this buy local movement, it's one thing to go into a local store and ask what's Canadian. It's another to like go on Amazon and try and buy something that's Canadian. That's very different, right? And it kind of does bring up those COVID memories of 5 years ago as well. But Rahim, when we're talking about this trade war and this push to buy Canadian, what is the long-term impact here locally?
A lot of people are making the sentiment, and I think you did last week, of why have we not been doing this as a focus already, right? Why have we not been focusing on buying Canadian? But also, it's very difficult for us to make sure we're not hurting Canadian businesses by just focusing on only buying what is made in Canada, because we need to make sure that the blowback to some of the businesses that are doing cross-border business is not hurting Canadians more than it's hurting Americans.
Yes.
And so I think the long-term solution is that we need to make sure that we're supporting Canadian business, we're supporting local, we're supporting even the service industry, but also making sure we're not, going a little bit further, educating ourselves on what is a local business, what is going to hurt Canadians if we stop supporting them. and we need to make sure we're buying and supporting all our Canadian businesses.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Jack. I'm interested because all your years writing as a columnist, what would be your take on this Buy Canadian movement? Because I certainly haven't really seen anything like this.
No, it is, and there's a good point that buy local and buy Canadian aren't the same things, but they come from the same place.
Sentiment.
Yes. But you do want to tell people, buy local. Who's paying the property taxes? That's one thing I always want to point out. Somebody tells me they got a great deal by ordering something direct from China. I'm going, great. If you want to phone 911 and get the Beijing Fire Department to respond, go ahead.
Right.
But who's going to sustain the economy? Keep the money local.
Yeah, and that's what, as much as you can insular and keep insular with that and stay and really support these businesses, the better it's going to be. I'm interested about the relationship between Canada and the USA, and not so much the political relationship, more the people. And it was this week down in Spokane, Washington. They had a town hall meeting where they had people come up and speak up and be like, we love Canada. This is ruining our relationship, and we love them. They had a Canada flag waving. Honestly, it gave me shivers seeing it this week. But how do you think American tourists are going to be received here in Victoria? Do you think it's going to change at all?
I sure hope not.
I don't think so.
I don't think
right? But we can get tough when the going gets tough, right?
Who are you supposed to be mad at? I'm mad at Donald Trump.
Right.
I'm not mad at Matt Damon.
You can't be mad at Matt Damon.
No.
That's true. He pretty much is Canadian.
But you hope that people... It's funny, I've run into quite a few American visitors lately, and they're almost all apologetic.
Right.
And you just want to go, it's not you. You're welcome. Great. We're mad. Yeah, there are a lot of people who will not go to the U.S. for the next 4 years. They will not shop American. That does not mean that they do not embrace Americans coming here to visit. It's not a...
Right, but it does start at the top, and then all these businesses down in the U.S. are losing a lot of business as a result. Will they start getting frustrated with Canadians being so strong-headed and strong-willed? Is that a possibility, or do you think that it's really just a political divide?
I hope not. I hope we treat all our American friends coming over well, and I hope that we look after them like we would people coming from any country, because we need it too. We need we need the tourism. We need the local economies to be flourishing. We need that, and we need to not punish and potentially discriminate all U.S. citizens based on a very small part. And you can even see it within the U.S. right now. There's a big divide, even in their own country. And so we need this, and we need it to stay strong in Canada. We need to keep our values strong, that we're good, happy people, and we will treat you well when you come here, and we're not going to discriminate or treat you harshly, and we appreciate you coming to our country. Yeah,
and Megan, in your story, you see people coming in and saying, okay, I want to buy Canadian, or do you have Americans come in and reach out? Because I know you do a lot of online orders as well, right?
We do ship to the States.
Yeah.
So there have been some interesting conversations, via email or phone calls with those customers. I think for us, in terms of tourism coming here, we should be welcoming them with open arms. They're going to be benefiting our economy, and we need that right now, obviously. In terms of the store at the Green Kiss, I have a really interesting perspective of this, because we only carry values-based healthy beauty brands, and so they're all vetted on the same platform of being these passionate, healthy beauty founders, that their whole business, every single layer of their business is based on values. And up until a month ago, if they were American or Canadian, didn't really matter as much to the consumer. We've always put a lot of pride into carrying Canadian brands. We have more Canadian brands than any brands from around the world in our store. We have 28 of them, which is unheard of, I think, in most beauty stores. But there are some vendors from other places, and I feel a little bit stuck, because those are people with really passionate small business stories, and they're people. It's not a flag, know. So it's hard.
I bet. Yeah, it is really hard. And it's going to continue to be hard. And I guess only time will tell how long this will last. This segment, that's the end. That's over. That's no longer going to last. But on the other side, we're talking about our favorite Canadian things. Each one of our great panelists is going to tell us their favorite Canadian thing. You are watching the 6 o'clock panel. Stevens. Welcome back to the 6 o'clock panel. We've got some great guests today. We've got Jack Knox, Megan Johns, Rahim Khudabux, or Rahim the Dream. And today, for our final segment, we thought, you know, everyone loves Canada right now. There's a big swell, and it's very warranted. But we thought, what's our favorite Canadian thing? So I've asked each one of our panelists to either show us or tell us their favorite Canadian thing. And Jack Knox, you're like the carrot top of this panel show. You brought props, but it's a very good prop indeed.
Terry Fox.
Yeah.
He embodied who we are when we are at our best. He was humble and selfless and tough-minded.
Love it.
Terry.
That's a great one. Honestly, that Terry Fox commercial that's on right now gives me shivers every time. I cried the first time I saw it, but it gives me shivers every time. Megan, what's yours?
I could do self-promotion and say my business, The Green Kids.
We'll say your business. It is your business. That's a great Canadian thing, but okay, go.
I could also say some great Canadian skincare brands, manufactured brands that we carry, like Glow Jar Beauty from Victoria and Viva Organics from Vancouver. But I have to say, to give us that hope and fun that we all need right now, Celine Dion.
Oh, yes. Your heart will go on.
Yeah.
I love it. That's a good one. And Rahim the Dream, finally, what is your favorite Canadian thing?
Well, I'm going to add to Jack's there because I did graduate from Cherry Fox High School, as much as Al and John probably would fight that. Did I actually graduate? But I did, so I agree with you 100%. But my favorite Canadian thing, or top Canadian thing, is the ability for us to score some amazing game-winning goals when it counts. Team Canada,
I love
Sidney Crosby, McDavid, they did phenomenal, and they carry Canada on their back when they do it. But I'd have to say my real answer will be our Canadian spirit and our Canadian pride and our ability to be proud Canadians, humble but prideful, and happy to be, and very proud to be Canadian, not just here, anywhere we go in the world, we're happy to be Canadian.
I love that, and that's such a good point. Mine was going to be hockey too, so I'm going to jump on that one. But like the fact that I've been in Greece and France and all over the world, and you meet another Canadian, and immediately you start talking about hockey, and I was like, I'm talking to my buddy who just comes over for the weekend. We could talk for miles. So all of you are fantastic panelists. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for your time. The lovely Jack Knox, Megan Johns, and Rahim Khudabux, Rahim the Dream. Thank you all for joining us on this show. That does it for the 6 o'clock panel this week. You can watch it anytime on the Check Plus app as well. Thank you again for joining us. Go Canada, go, and we'll see you next time. Good night.